कार्तिकेय शर्मा जी।
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his talks with President Trump focused on freeing hostages and eliminating Hamas's military and government capabilities. He insists the job in Gaza is not done yet, but says negotiators are working on a ceasefire as Trump's envoy hopes for a deal this week. Ukraine's Zelensky calls for secondary sanctions on Russia's war profits after Moscow launched a record 728 drones overnight. Ukraine says 8 civilians died in the Russian drone and bombing attacks on the Donetsk region. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will welcome France's President Macron to Downing Street for lunch to discuss immigration and Ukraine. The visit marks the first by a European leader since Brexit, with Starmer expected to push for a returns deal on asylum seekers. The Kremlin says it remains calm after President Trump called Putin's Ukraine comments lies during their phone calls. Spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters Trump's harsh rhetorical style is well known and Moscow takes it in its stride. Spain's Conservative opposition leader Alberto Núñez Feijóo rejects Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's attempts to end a damaging corruption scandal. Feijóo accused the socialists of operating like a criminal organisation despite Sanchez's public apology and anti-corruption plan. Taiwan begins its largest military exercises, testing how forces can decentralize command if China strikes first. The Han Kuang drills involve HIMARS Sky Sword missiles and 22,000 reservists, but Beijing dismisses them as a bluff. President Trump has officially delayed higher tariffs on US imports, sending warnings to 14 countries, including Japan and South Korea. With a 90-day pause ending, Trump says the new August deadline for a 25% levy is not firm, but not 100% firm as deal talks continue. Pope Leo interrupted his vacation to celebrate Mass in Castel Gandolfo, calling for urgent action on climate change. The new pontiff warned we live in a world that is burning and urged Catholics to care for creation, following Pope Francis's legacy. Now, our top story today, we move to Europe, where a day after US President Donald Trump claimed that Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke trash about Ukraine in their phone calls, the Kremlin said that it is calm about it, adding that Trump has a harsh way of using phrases. Despite Trump's sharp comments about Putin on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia continued its strikes on Ukraine overnight, with the largest drone attack in the 3 years. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Russia attempted to strike 741 targets with 728 drones and 13 missiles. Zelensky said that the attack comes precisely at a time where efforts are being made to achieve peace in the region and establish a ceasefire, adding that Russia continues to rebuff them all. While taking a jibe at Putin, Trump also condemned the war. He stressed that a lot of people are dying and that the war between the two nations should end. We're now joined by our guest, Yasmin Al-Zakhavi, who's a journalist and Arabic language tutor. She's located in Vienna, Austria. Thank you very much, Yasmin, for joining us on the program. How should we interpret Donald Trump's new rhetoric regarding the Russian president? We've seen him flip-flap between opinions between the two counterparts. What are your thoughts on these new comments made by the US president in regards to the Russian president?
Yeah, I think for Trump now it's very important to end this war, because for US this costs a lot of money, and for Trump it's a problem to keep paying for Ukraine or to support Ukraine. Recently he stopped the weapon delivery to Ukraine and of course that weakens the Ukraine's ability to resist the Russian war against it. Also for Trump, it's very important to show as a peace man. So he's trying always to show that he is the one who is bringing peace and the wars between nations or countries. So yeah, this is his policy, I think, of show himself as a peace man. But I don't think he really cares about Ukrainians who are dying every day. But I think it's more his policy. Yeah.
Zasmin, thank you very much. You are staying with us for further updates. We have a related development coming at you. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Rome to meet Pope Leo XIV and attend a global summit on Ukraine's rebuilding. Zelensky will also hold talks with Italy's president and US envoy Keith Kellogg, representing President Trump, at a two-day conference. The visit comes hours after Russia launched its biggest air assault in 3 years, most of which of Ukraine says were intercepted. Trump has now reversed his stance, promising more weapons for Ukraine and heavily criticizing Putin's claims about the war. We're once again joined by Zasmin to discuss this in further detail. Zasmin, what are your thoughts on also this visit by Zelensky to meet the Pope Leo XIV in Rome? We obviously previously saw the possibility of the Vatican actually brokering these peace talks, and also obviously this reversal by President Donald Trump in now resuming the weapons aid to Ukraine. Donald Trump seems to have turned his tables once again. What are your thoughts, Zasmin?
About Zelensky's visit to Italy, this is, of course, not the first visit. He has been to many European countries. Recently, he has been also to Vienna, and he also met the president, the Austrian president. This is very common activity, let's say, of Zelensky. It's of course part of his policy to always bring support from Europe, and recently from the Pope, of course. And yeah, this is maybe to replace kind of the reduced reduced American support. So maybe he could get more from Europe. And about Trump, I'm not really sure why he's turning. Let's say his words. This is kind of common thing. We have seen it a lot also in his first first time when he was president, and now we always notice this, that he says something and then he says, no, I didn't say that. So maybe he says something and then he thinks again, and yeah, so it's not so clear for me actually. But yeah, Zelensky has a very clear policy, and it's always the same. It doesn't change. So he's always trying to get more support and attention also, especially here in Europe.
Yes, Zasmin, obviously since we've had this backdrop of peace negotiations, we've now had 2 direct talks between both Russia and Ukraine, both in the Turkish city of Istanbul. We've seen nothing but a mere 2 prisoner swaps from both sides. As negotiations push to no fruition, it really seems, the conflict is escalating in its backdrop. What are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts on the current state of the war, both on the ground and both diplomatically?
Yeah, the planned or organized meet in Istanbul was joined by Zelensky. So the Ukrainian side was present, but the problem that the Russian side wasn't present. So that's why it failed. But I think that Russians are not really interested in ending the war. like they are benefiting from it. So this is also like kind of their business. So yeah, Trump is trying to show as like peaceman from one side. For Ukraine, it's very important to end this war because it's actually happening on its land and it's weakening the country, the economy. So it's a disaster for Ukraine. But for Russia, I don't think it's very important to end the war. So they're not really giving attention or privilege to negotiations. So I think that's why it failed in Istanbul, and it's still under question. Like when will we have negotiations? When will we have end of the war, etc.
Yes, of course. You are staying. Thank you so much. You are staying with us for our final update on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We have 2 Chinese nationals that have been detained in Kiev for allegedly spying on Ukraine's Neptune missile system. Ukrainian security officials say a 24-year-old former student and his father were caught trying to transfer classified missile data to Chinese intelligence. The younger man, expelled from a tech university in 2023, allegedly tried to recruit a Ukrainian with defense access and was also caught red-handed during the document handover. The father, who lives in China but made repeated visits to Ukraine, reportedly supervised the operation. Searches revealed encrypted messages and mobile data linking them to an effort to obtain critical details on the RK-360MC Neptune system, which was used to sink Russia's flagship Moskva in 2022. Both suspects face espionage charges with sentences of up to 15 years if convicted. This comes as President Zelensky accuses Beijing of quietly supporting Russia, sanctioning 5 Chinese companies this week for supplying parts used in drones attacking Ukraine. Now we're once again joined by Yasmin. Yasmin, what can you say about the support Russia has in their war? Foreign support mainly. We have seen Kiev accuse Beijing of quietly being involved in this war. Beijing, however, reiterates that it is objective in this war. What do you have to say about the international helpers or alleged international helpers which are aiding Russia in this conflict?
Yeah, of course. Like if we take the Eastern Alliance, for example, North Korea or China, they actually do support Russia. For North Korea, this is obviously they're sending soldiers, for example, to Ukraine. For China, no, it's more like hidden. It's like under the table. They do support Russia. I think for China, it's not about being really directly involved in the war against Ukraine. It's more like making some benefit, or maybe it's kind of economical question that supporting Russia could be economically beneficial for China, but I don't think China is really willing to, let's say, being directly involved in the war against Ukraine. So definitely, China is supporting Russia in somehow, but maybe not that much as, for example, Iran or North Korea, which are sending soldiers and weapons. For example, Iranian drones are like hitting Kiev, for example, and other Ukrainian cities every couple of days. So yeah, I think they're all involved in the war, but only China, I think, they are like secretly do support Russia, and I think there are much more that like work with Russia or support for Russian war against Ukraine, but this is like kind of secret, and we don't really know all the details about it. But definitely there is support by China for Russia.
Yes, Yasmin, to finish off, I'm going to ask you just a broader question. How long do you think it's going to take, or what signs do we have of this possibly moving towards peace, or are we expecting this conflict to continue for the foreseeable future? Yasmin, what are your thoughts?
This is a very difficult question. Every single Ukrainian is today asking this question. We, like as Ukrainians in Europe, or like not in Ukraine, or even Ukrainians who are still under these attacks, this is the daily question. When will we come to the end of this war? So far, it doesn't seem to come to an end. Maybe Trump will be able to really make a progress in negotiations or bring Zelensky and Putin together one day, hopefully. But it's really difficult to answer this question. It's very complicated. I don't think it's a near future, but I still hope that this year or next year we will already see some progress. That there are negotiations, there are serious negotiations from both sides, and for example, there is like progress in being on the way of like ending this war, hopefully.
Yasmin Al-Zakhrawi, thank you very much for joining us and for your insight on the program. We will bring you all updates from the ongoing conflict in Russia and Ukraine as we get them. Now we move on. The leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan will meet in the UAE on Thursday for peace talks. This announcement came a day after the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio expressed hope for a swift deal between the two arch foes. Armenia and Azerbaijan have fought two wars over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Azerbaijan had recaptured this area from Armenian forces in a lightning offensive this year, the year of 2023. Apologies. This lead had led to an exodus of 100,000 ethnic Armenians. In March, Yerevan and Baku had agreed on the text of a comprehensive peace deal, but Baku has since then outlined a host of demands, including amendments to Armenia's constitution to drop its territorial claims for Karabakh and before signing the document. Nikol Pashinyan and Ilham Aliyev will meet in Abu Dhabi, and we will bring you updates on that situation as well. Now we move on. Turkey's President Erdogan has vowed to safeguard the disarmament process of the outlawed Kurdistan Warriors Party, otherwise known as the PKK. Erdogan was speaking to the members of his ruling AK party in Parliament today. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Ülkelerimizin uğruna can verdiği değerlerin rehberliğinde Türkiye'yi inşallah yarım asırlık bir musibetten kurtarıyor. Ülkemizin ayağına vurulmuş bu kanlı prangayı tamamen söküp atıyoruz. Sizlerin vasıtasıyla ekranları başında bizleri izleyen, önümüzdeki günlerde olumlu haberlerin alınacağı bir evreye giriyoruz. Bu hayırlı sürecin herhangi bir yol kazası yaşanmadan, karanlık ve kirli mahfiller tarafından sabote edilmesine fırsat vermeden, mümkün olan en kısa sürede başarıyla neticelenmesini temenni ediyorum.
He stressed an attempt to sabotage the PKK's disarmament will not be allowed, and added that positive developments are expected in the coming days. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Turkey's pro-Kurdish party confirmed that the PKK are set to begin handing over their weapons this Friday in Iraq's Sulaymaniyah region. The party further urged that the disarmament process will be made permanent, with legal guarantees and mechanisms to support a transition to democratic politics. We're now joined by John Rossamondo, who's the president of Viking Research Associates and a geopolitical analyst. He joins us from Washington, D.C. live. John, thank you very much for joining us on the program. How significant is President Erdogan's pledge to safeguard the PKK's disarmament process? Is this a genuine step towards lasting peace, do you think?
Well, Erdogan has been after, the elimination of the PKK for decades. The one thing that was significant was Abdullah Öcalan, the founder of the PKK, announcing earlier this year that he was disbanding the PKK as an entity and ending its 40-year insurgency against Turkey.
John, what is the importance of the PKK in the region? What can you tell us a bit more background information for those who don't know?
Well, the PKK was a Marxist-Leninist guerrilla movement established with the help of the KGB back during the Cold War. It first started focusing on independence from Turkey and the creation of an independent Kurdish state to more of autonomy within Turkey. And it's also linked with the Syrian Democratic Forces that the U.S. stood up in Syria against the Assad regime.
Yes, and how do you analyse Erdogan's handling of this situation, especially given the current political climate in Turkey, which is quite heated right now?
Well, I just look at this as just sort of a way for Erdogan to gain support from Turkish nationalists who hate the PKK because of its terrorist attacks and its insurgency against Turkish rule. So this is just him trying to increase the stature of his AKP party.
John Rossimondo, thank you very much for joining us. You're staying with us to discuss further updates from the region. We now move to Europe, where Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has said that he's cautiously optimistic about striking a last-minute trade deal with the United States to stave off a new round of tariffs threatened by President Donald Trump. Addressing Parliament today, Merz said intensive negotiations between Brussels and Washington are now underway, with hopes of reaching an agreement in the next few days or at the latest by the end of the month. Let's take a listen.
Ich bin jedenfalls verhalten optimistisch, dass es uns in den nächsten Tagen spätestens bis zum Ende des Monats gelingen könnte, hier zu einem Abkommen mit den Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika zu kommen. Das liegt vor allem im Interesse unserer exportorientierten Wirtschaft. Das gilt für die chemische Industrie, für die pharmazeutische Industrie, für den Maschinenbau. Das gilt für die Automobilindustrie, für die Stahlindustrie, für die Aluminiumindustrie. Hier steht viel auf dem Spiel. Ich selbst stehe ebenfalls in intensivem Kontakt sowohl mit der amerikanischen Regierung, auch dem Präsidenten und mit der Europäischen Kommission. Unser Ziel ist, so schnell wie möglich ein Handelsabkommen mit den Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika zu erreichen, das mit möglichst niedrigen Zollsätzen den gegenseitigen Handel zwischen Amerika und der Europäischen Union verbindet.
President Trump announced his sweeping reciprocal tariffs back in April, but suspended them to give trade partners a chance to negotiate. The higher tariffs, including a basic 20% levy on the EU, plus sectoral rates on cars, aluminium and steel, were set to take to effect this week. But now Trump has once again pushed that deadline back to August the 1st, giving both sides more time. Merz stressed that striking a deal is vital for major European industries like chemicals, pharmaceuticals, mechanical engineering and car manufacturing. He called for a quick and simple agreement, warning that the demands coming from Washington are not easy to meet, but he said he remains in direct contact with President Trump to try and find common ground. We're once again joined by John Rossimondo to discuss this in further detail. John, what are your thoughts about the current state of Donald Trump's tariff plans? Some would say that he would have anticipated to have more deals inked by now, but how do you analyse Chancellor Merz's cautious optimism here that a deal for the European Union is coming very soon?
Well, I think that you've had a lot of hemming and hawing from the European Union about President Trump's tariff plan because it really hurts the European economy. But I think that they were coming to the realization that President Trump means business and that they're going to have to make some sort of a deal, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 6 months from now. There's going to be a deal. Trump wants to have more American products sold in Europe, and the Europeans are going to have to make some concessions.
Yes, what happens if President goes ahead with the new tariffs despite these talks? How could that impact Germany's key industries and also consumers in the United States?
Well, it would see European goods increase in price sold in the U.S. It would also, limit, access to the American economy from German companies, which do a lot of business. I mean, Germany is one of our largest trading partners. So there's a lot of incentive for the Germans to make a deal, at least coming from President Trump's perspective.
Yes, indeed. And do you think this trade standoff could push Germany and obviously the wider European Union here to rethink their reliance on the US market? Do you think it could backfire on the US?
There are always risks, but the U.S. is the world's largest economy, so it's their interest to play ball with President Trump and reduce their tariffs on American goods. I mean, that's what this is all about. President Trump has railed for decades about whether or not U.S. Goods are treated the same in foreign markets as they are at home.
Yes, John, you are staying with us to discuss further updates. We have another update coming from Europe. French police have raided the Paris headquarters of the far-right National Rally Party as part of a broad investigation into election fraud, illegal loans and fake invoices. Around 20 officers and 2 judges seized documents, emails and records, prompting party president Jordan Bardella to call it unprecedented and a form of political harassment. Prosecutors say they're investigating whether National Rally used fictional billing and overcharges to illegally claim campaign expenses in 2022 and 2024, but no one has been charged yet. The party's founder, Marine Le Pen, who was convicted of embezzlement in April for hiring fake EU Parliament staffers, is already banned from public office for 5 years. She's appealing the verdict, however, but a new ruling is expected next year. If overturned, she could still run in France's 2027 presidential race. US President Donald Trump, a vocal supporter of Le Pen, has dismissed the case as a witch hunt, comparing her legal troubles to his own. Meanwhile, National Rally remains a major political force, despite being blocked from power last year after President Emmanuel Macron called a snap election to keep them out. We're once again joined by John Rossamondo. John, what impact could this investigation have on the National Rally's popularity, and what are your views on it? We've seen Donald Trump call the case, which Marine Le Pen was found guilty of in a French court for embezzling EU funds, a political witch hunt. What do you think about these new raids on the headquarters of the National Rally in Paris?
Well, I think it's a matter of how Marine Le Pen plays it off in the French media and in the public relations war. President Trump won in last year's election because he was able to make it a referendum on a political witch hunt. So I think that there's a high probability that a lot of this is politically motivated because Marine Le Pen was increasing in her popularity among the French people. I mean, it's something that Macron and the corrupt French leadership fear. But I think that it's all about public relations at this point.
Yes, John. Let's avoid speculation here. However, do you think there's a chance that if Marine Le Pen's case and conviction is overturned, that she will actually gain popularity? How does a case like this affect a leader's popularity in a country? Given past examples, like we've already brought in Trump, how do you think the public are going to perceive that?
Well, if she puts Macron and the French political establishment on political trial, like President Trump put the Democrats on political trial here in the United States, it could really assist her. I mean, especially if she, frames herself as the victim of a political witch hunt. People don't like, unfair treatment of political opponents, especially in a democracy.
Yes, and what does President Trump's vocal support for Le Pen and his witch hunt comparison tell us about far-right movements across Europe and the US how are they trying to frame these corruption probes?
Well, I think that what it says is that there's a lot of populist discontent. I mean, in France, you have problems with Islamic extremist migration. You have problems with the French economy, and lots of things that the populists are reacting to, just as in this country. So I think that it's something that the people who have created these problems don't want to fix the problems, and they're dealing with trying to censor the rise of populism around the world.
What are your thoughts on the future of the National Rally without Marine Le Pen as a leader? Obviously, there's been questions raised about Jordan Bardella, his age, his lack of experience, etc. He has voiced support for Le Pen in the past. However, if this situation doesn't get overturned, what are your thoughts for how the National Rally will move forward?
Well, I think that this is a party that is formed around the personality of Marine Le Pen. I think she's irreplaceable for this party. So, if she remains imprisoned, it will be a severe blow for this party.
John Rosamondo, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Always a pleasure to get your insight. We now move over to Africa for our next story, where Kenyan President William Ruto has warned against attempts to overthrow the government through unconstitutional means and ordered police to shoot violent protesters in the leg. This comes days after 31 people were killed in nationwide anti-government demonstrations. His toughest remarks yet come as the East African nation faces a wave of violent protests over economic stagnation, corruption, and police brutality. Ruto, who was elected in 2022, also said violent protesters should be shot in the leg and be taken to hospital and then taken to court. The demonstrations began in June last year as a youth-led anti-taxation protest, which subsequently forced the government to withdraw the contested finance bill. AFP reports that 51 people have died in protests over the last 2 months. Let's listen in to what William Ruto had to say.
Niliona ati wanasema ati sasa hawatangojea 2027 ati tupige kura, ati wanataka kupanga fujo, ati wapange maandamano, ati wachome mali ya watu, ati walete maafa Kenya, ati ndio wapindue serikali ya Kenya kabla ya 2027. Mimi nataka niwaambie wajaribu, watajua hawajui. Wajaribu. Allah. Hii ni Kenya ya demokrasia, my friends. Kenya ni nchi ya demokrasia. Hamuwezi kutuambia ya kwamba mnaweza kupanga fujo ati mpindue serikali ya Kenya.
While reacting on the ongoing situation in Kenya, the United Nations said it was deeply troubled over the deaths during this week's protests and that intentional lethal force by law enforcement officers, including with firearms, should only be used when strictly necessary to protect life from imminent threat. We're now joined by Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin, who's an African journalist. He's joining us live from Ghana. Mahmoud, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Could you give us a bit of background, a bit of context to who President Ruto is and what his rule is like, how it's perceived, and the situation which is going on currently in Kenya, which has reportedly led to the deaths of many people during these protests?
Yeah, so President Ruto was the vice president of Uhuru Kenyatta, who won the last election. And if you had monitored the situations in Kenya, even before he was elected as a president, the former president was actually didn't support his presidency. There were some information circulated, around that he wanted their opponent to actually win the election. And so basically the former president who Ruto was the vice president to, didn't support his presidency. We actually do not know what could have been the reason, because after serving for 8 years and somebody was your vice, in a political landscape, you would expect that you would have to support your opponent you would have to support your vice president to win the election. But in this case, we saw that some information and some utterances were made, which concluded that he wasn't in support of Ruto's presidency. And after he won the election, there were some issues. Even at there was a meeting in African leaders meeting in Ethiopia where we understand even the former president were in support of their opponent to win the chairmanship race in Ethiopia. And so a lot of issues came around and people talked about it. Now, the issue in Kenya right now has to do with the citizens not satisfied with the promises made to them by President William Ruto, and they think that something must be done immediately to, save their livelihood and then to change their living standards. And this is the reason why they have been demonstrating, protesting, to just draw the attention of the president to the issues that they are very much concerned about. And so in the last few weeks, you could see that people went to the street to register their displeasure about it. And the fact that the security has not taken it lightly, in some cases shooting people to die, and this has become a very issue there. So people are not happy about it, and like we have always said, people have the right to protest, but they are not happy that the military or the security is actually shooting some of the participants of this protest on the streets in Kenya.
Yes, Mahmood, given Kenya's history with contested elections and protest crackdowns, how might this new wave of political violence affect the country's political stability and international reputation?
Well, there has always been a recorded incidences of violence in Kenya, especially crime in the capital, Nairobi. Even without election, there are reported crimes in the capital, Nairobi. And so during election, a lot of things happen, including opponent trying to do things that would favor them, and incumbency, the president, the party in power would also want to do things to favor them. It is very common here in Africa. Some part of the country, everybody wants to do everything that would favor them. And that has been a concern, especially in Kenya. You could see human rights activists have been speaking against all of these things in Kenya. And so it sometimes affects the election and question the democratic rules that the country, the leadership in that country actually set up to ensure that people are being protected from these violence, crime, and all that. So as to when this violent crime would end in Kenya, it becomes a very difficult question for people to answer, because whilst others are trying to stop it, some would want to, benefit from these crimes. So it's been a very difficult situation, especially in a country where democracy is supposed to be practiced.
Of course, and Mahmood, how are regional organisations like the African Union or the East African Community likely to respond to this escalating violence, or is there fears they might stay silent?
Well, there has been a concern on social media, especially Kenyans and other African countries, people who have direct links in Kenya, especially those who travel there frequently, calling on the African Union to intervene. and to ensure that this violence would end. I mean, like we mentioned at that time, the citizens are making three basic things: accountability. They want also the security to end their brutality, and they also want their economic status to change. And we believe that if the government is able to implement measures to ensure these things happen, not immediately, but actions are if action are taken to, show the signs that these things will happen in the next few years, months, or years. I'm sure that the citizens of Kenya would also learn to wait till things change. But it appears they are not seeing that. They are not seeing any change happening anytime soon. And so they would want to protest, register their displeasure, and then so that the government or the president would ensure that things are changed for the citizens of the country. So people who are very much concerned about this situation in Kenya are calling on the African Union to intervene, and other leaders across the continent to intervene to ensure that the violent crime or the situation in Kenya doesn't escalate like we are seeing now.
Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin, thank you very much. You are staying with us to discuss more regional updates. South Sudan says 8 migrants deported by the Trump administration are now in government care in Juba after losing a court battle to stop their removal. The men, originating from Cuba, Laos, Mexico, Myanmar, Sudan and Vietnam, had been held for over a month at a US base before being flown to South Sudan last Friday. Juba officials say they're undergoing screening under local and international standards, calling their acceptance a gesture of goodwill in response to a US request. Here's what Apuk Oyel Mayan Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson had to say.
The government of the Republic of South Sudan received these individuals through the appropriate national institutions. They are currently in Juba under the care of the relevant authorities who are screening them and ensuring their safety and well-being in accordance with South Sudanese laws and applicable international norms and practices. This development comes in the context of ongoing bilateral engagement between the Republic of South Sudan and the United States of America. As part of a broader framework of cooperation, both countries continue to engage constructively and with good faith on a range of matters.
Their cases has sparked controversy in Washington, becoming a flashpoint in President Donald Trump's hardline immigration strategy that involves sending migrants to different countries. The migrants' lawyers argued that deporting them to a politically unstable country like South Sudan violated the US Constitution's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. But a federal court rejected their bid, clearing the way for their removal. We're once again joined by Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin to discuss this in further detail. Mahmoud, we have seen this happen with Western governments before. Why would South Sudan agree to accept migrants from such diverse countries and also make a deal with the United States like this? What does it mean for their relationship with the United States, and what are they benefiting? What is South Sudan benefiting from this? I believe you're on mute, Mahmoud. Apologies.
So in March this year, the U.S. itself issued a warning to its citizens, not to travel to Sudan. Mm-hmm. And because of the crime and kidnapping and armed conflict in that part of the world. This was issued and published on U.S. State government website just to advise its citizens. And so U.S. even evacuated some of its officials in Sudan. And therefore Sudan evacuated some of its officials from Sudan because of the crime in that part of the country. And now what happened was that after 2011, when Sudan gained its independence, it relied heavily on external aid, especially from the US. And so now US has decided that we are not going to support support with any aid like the US aid that was being given to some African countries for development projects. Now South Sudan is in a critical situation because they are not getting that aid anymore. And so in one of the issues that people say is that, or one of the concerns, or one of the reasons that people raise is that probably South Sudan would want to establish a good relationship with US, and that might give them another leverage to be able to get support from the United States, because right now the aid is not coming, or after US has withdrawn its support to South Sudan in terms of the US aid and other stuff, it becomes difficult for that country because of the situation they have found themselves in. And so, but another question people are asking, why would you deport people who have committed crimes in your country to South Sudan, where arms are easily available? Now, if somebody can commit a crime in a well-established state like the USA, how much more with Sudan? And these are the questions that people ask. How much more with Sudan if people can commit crime in the United States and were convicted and prosecuted? How much more with Sudan, South Sudan, where arms are easily available and people can acquire it at any point in time?
Yes, Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin, thank you very much for your insight and joining us on the programme. We now move over to South Asia for our next story, where the ongoing investigation into the cause of the deadly June the 12th crash of the Air India 171 has now narrowed its focus. The investigation is revolving around the movement of the engine fuel control switches. This is following an analysis of the Boeing 787's integrated flight and voice data recorders. The same has been confirmed to the Air Current. The Ahmedabad plane crash in India killed 241 out of the 242 passengers and crew on board the aircraft, and 19 people on the ground, 32 seconds after it took off from Ahmedabad Airport bound for London's Gatwick. A preliminary report from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau is expected to be released around July the 11th in New Delhi. This will mark 30 days since the first fatal accident involving Boeing's latest generation wide-body. Just how much information will be included in the report remains to be seen. We're now joined by Captain VN Jha, who's an aviation expert. He joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Captain. What are your thoughts about how this situation has progressed, about the information that's come out since, and what might we expect to be in this report? What new details can we find out? Who can be held accountable, etc.? What are your thoughts?
Very good evening to you. Look, what report has come out, I also read today in the newspaper. That's not really authenticated report. Someone has said something which when Reuters wanted to cross-check with the DGCA or the AIB, they refused to comment on it. So whatever information has come about the fuel control switch, it is unauthenticated, and really we have been trying to avoid any speculation into the entire accidents. But of course, this one accident is something where lot many things are on stake. It is at stake for the Boeing 787 fleet. This is being the first accident, first fatal accident. It is very damning onto the GE engines. It is damning onto the aircraft designers if a single switch or the switch that can stop the fuel to the aircraft can be switched off inadvertently, then surely it is a design fault. But, you know, once again, I reiterate, why are we in so hurry to speculate or opine onto something which is unauthenticated? Look, I have conducted about 7 fatal aircraft accidents myself, and I know the fatal aircraft accidents are seldom having a single cause. It is usually, I have seen a mosaic of the pictures in which there could be a primary element of failure to which many other errors have cropped in. There could be, from the day one, the clip that surfaced out, the
Yes.
video clip, I've been saying that there have been a dual engine failure. That stands even today. But what all pilot was supposed to be doing, or what all the handlers were supposed to be doing, that there could be error of judgment, but I don't want to preempt at this stage.
Of course.
Look, what I'm trying to say is, even if the DGC or AIB, they should not be revealing or divulging some information from within in the piecemeal. Let us wait. If they have got this 30 days period of preliminary inquiry report, let's wait for that. Even that they are not compelled with. To my understanding, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, those data are still not in the hands of the investigating team. So I think it would be justified to wait for some time, let the the data come out, and then we should be able to opine on that.
Of course, Group Captain Jar, we don't want to speculate here, especially that we have information coming. But 32 seconds this plane was in the air. What broader safety or design questions might this raise for regulators, airlines or Boeing itself?
Look, the design failure and other things we will be talking on to when it is established.
Okay.
What the immediate aim of investigation should be that this error, what has happened, should not happen again onto the another aircraft while we are in the preliminary stage of investigation. If there is something drastic, let entire fleet be grounded. If there is some design sort of failure. But again, I repeat, we should not speculate or preempt anything at this stage. There is a team of inquiry who is doing something. If they put their hand or finger onto something which is drastic, which needs to be taken cognizance of immediately, let the entire fleet be grounded. But we are not in that position. We are not in that data or the parameter which has caused the accident. This small piecemeal evidence, not even evidence, hearsay that one switch has been operated which controls the engine, the fuel flow to the engine. Is there a single switch? No. I think, to my knowledge, there are individual switches for the individual engines, and these switches are guarded by all means. These are guarded by the hardware there inside. It just cannot be flicked or inadvertently. Someone will have to open that particular box and then switch it off. The moment you switch it off, the fuel flow, immediately the RPM will start burning, and the pilot will have to say, "Hey, what have you done?" And he has done. 2 switches have to be operated simultaneously. It cannot be done like that. So let us wait for the authentic report to come. I think there is more of a speculation in this small piecemeal evidence that is coming. Not evidence, some leak out, maybe from the AIB or someone has given. Let us wait for this. This will be my suggestion.
Yes, Group Captain Jar, thank you very much. Looking forward to discussing that report with you when we know the full authenticated details. We move over to the sporting world for our next story, where Christian Horner has been sacked as Red Bull team principal after 20 years in the role. The 51-year-old has been in charge of the Formula One team since its inception in 2005, leading them to 8 Drivers' Championships and 6 Constructors' Championship titles. The dismissal follows months of declining form for the team and internal disputes at the highest level. It also comes 17 months after Horner was accused of sexual harassment and coercive controlling behaviour by a female employee. Horner was twice cleared of the claims, firstly after an internal investigation conducted by a lawyer, then by another lawyer who dismissed the complaint's appeal. While Horner has been removed from his role, it has not been made clear if he has formally departed the company or if a settlement or severance is yet in place. Laurent Mekies has been made the new team principal and chief executive of Red Bull Racing and has been promoted from second team Racing Bulls. The 48-year-old Frenchman had been in the role since the start of the 2024 season and was previously racing director for Ferrari. We now move back to South Asia, where ousted Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, reportedly ordered the crackdown of student-led protests in Bangladesh last year. As per reports, the Awami League chief was the one to tell police to brutally crack down on protesters. This major revelation has been made by a BBC audio of the former Prime Minister leaked in March, and it indicated that Hasina was the one who called on security forces to use lethal force. In July of 2024, around 1,400 people were killed during the protests and nationwide unrest in Bangladesh. The former Prime Minister had also been accused of crimes against humanity for our orders during the protests. As per the BBC, the leaked audio had been attributed to a conversation between Sheikh Hasina and an unidentified senior government official. During the conversation, the Bangladesh leader is heard asking security forces to use, quote, lethal weapons against protesters, adding that police and security officials should shoot at them wherever they find the demonstrators. The BBC further added that the conversation took place at Hasina's official residence in Dhaka, the Ganaban, on July the 18th. All these details, however, has not been confirmed independently by NewsX World. We're now joined by Pulak Ghatak, who's a senior Bangladeshi journalist located in the Bangladeshi capital. Thank you very much, Pulak, for joining us on the programme. What are your thoughts on this leaked audio? We can't play it for you here. I'm not sure if you have heard it, but it does clearly have Sheikh Hasina's voice, which has been attributed to BBC I, using some language saying to use lethal force against these protesters. So Hasina obviously faces crimes against humanity charges. What are your thoughts on this situation? Does this confirm anything for you?
Thank you. The leaked video footage is nothing new. I think it's not so important because curfew was imposed on that night, and a shoot-at-sight order is a part of curfew. So it's nothing new, but a propaganda. And the discussion should be held whether it was important to impose curfew or not. Certainly, it was a necessity at that time, in my view. There was no other alternative but to impose curfew, but it was also important that the government forces maintain ultimate restraint so that unnecessary deaths do not occur. It is still a matter of investigation whether the government forces used brute forces or not, because many police were killed. This government who have occupied the power at that time is accepting that, is admitting that at least 41 policemen were killed. But the victims are claiming that there are hundreds of police officers missing and they were killed. Whatever it might be, when police were being killed, they had to use arms, I think. And the demonstrators were attacking on government buildings, prison cells. Hundreds of militants, Islamist militants were released from jails after attacking the jails in various places. People are being killed, and I can say one instance in Rangpur city where Haradhan Rai, a councillor of city corporation, was beaten to death in broad daylight by the demonstrators, and his dead body was dragged on the street and then hung upright down, and it was live casted. This was the situation. So usage of force was essential at that time, but it is unfortunate that some people have died also.
Yes, Pulak, I was wondering if you could take us back to the Hasina's final time in power and just kind of give us a bit of an insight into the feeling in the country at the time, the actions, the things that happened, the supposed atrocities that happened in these protests. For those who don't know, could you do the due diligence of educating them a little bit on the feeling in Bangladesh at the time nearing Sheikh Hasina's end in power?
You are asking about the present situation or at that time?
At that time.
At that time. There was disgruntled people coming to the street, no doubt about it. People are disgruntled, people are very much agitated at that time. So the failure of Sheikh Hasina government is she could not solve the problem politically. She had to use power, she had to use force. But it is true that the movement was not peaceful. The movement was violent. It was very much violent, and it was, as admitted by the present interim government chief, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, it was a pre-planned, meticulously designed movement to create a volatile situation. People were taking up arms. They were attacking on police stations. Hundreds of police were killed. In many places, people are being attacked, beaten to death. It was a very horrific situation, and government forces also had to come down heavily in various places. There was no alternative, I think, but it is unfortunate.
Pulak Gatak, thank you very, very much for joining us on the programme. Thank you for your insight on the subject. We now move over to some news coming in from the Indo-Pacific. Japan's ground self-defense force has begun deploying its V-22 Osprey aircraft to a newly opened permanent base in southwestern Japan, marking a major step in Tokyo's ongoing military build-up. The first of 17 tilt-rotor aircraft arrived safely at Camp Saga. Officials say the full fleet will be relocated by mid-August. The move comes as Japan strengthens its defense posture in response to China's growing maritime activity in the region. However, the Ospreys were previously stationed near Tokyo, but the strategic relocation puts them closer to potential hotspots in the East China Sea. Japanese defense officials say the deployment will enhance rapid response capabilities across these southwestern islands. A 33-year-old Chinese national, Xu Wei, has been arrested in Milan on a US indictment accusing him of hacking into American university systems to steal COVID-19 research. The alleged intrusions occurred between February the 20th and June 2021 and were reportedly directed by China's Ministry of State Security. Xu is believed to be a part of the Half Noom hacking group, blamed for breaching over 60,000 US entities, including universities, labs and law firms. He faces a 9-count indictment in the Southern District of Texas, charging him with wire fraud, unauthorized computer access and aggravated identity theft, each carrying potentially decades in prison. Extradition proceedings are now underway. China has firmly denied reports that it transferred surface-to-air missile batteries to Iran following last month's Israeli attacks. The denial comes after Middle East Eye claims Chinese air defense systems were sent to Iran in exchange for oil shipments under a truce deal with Israel. Beijing's embassy in Israel rejected the report, saying China never exports weapons to warring states and opposes any proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. China remains Iran's biggest oil customer despite international sanctions. Well, that's all that we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.